Well, hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Okay, so this is the third lot of broccoli, and this is the autumn Belmont F1 variety that we planted a few weeks ago. As you can see, the plants have got quite big now, so it's now time to sort of prick them out. And this is exactly the same as I did earlier in the year. All I've got is these square pots, sort of these sort of 4-inch square pots, and I've done 30 of them here. I'll probably need a few more than that, but as you can see, these are now about kind of 4 inches or so high. So these are more than ready to be pricked out. So basically what you need to do is handle them by the roots. And what I'm going to do is just go in at the corner here, pull out a few. Like that. If you pull them out, you can see that the plants, try and handle them by the roots if you can. So you end up with a little ball of root, and then the plants at the front. You can't see this, it's just off the camera at the front here. But basically what I'm going to do is plant them in these pots. And what you want to try and do is plant them slightly deeper than they were in the seed tray. The reason being is if you plant them slightly deeper, the thing is with brassicas, they don't have a particularly strong root system. As you can see, there's not much root on that one. But if you plant them about an inch or so deeper than they were in there, then the roots, because I've got loads of these, I'm going to get rid of the smaller ones. The roots tend to make a better sort of rootstock, if you like. Now, it's not the same as tomatoes. Tomatoes will sort of grow more roots from the side of the plant, but with brassicas, it just helps to anchor the plant a bit more. So no more roots will form, but the root ball will be further down, so therefore it can get to the water and the nutrients a bit better than it would do if you planted it at the same level. So, but you can sort of plant these a bit lower. There are certain plants that you can't do that with, things like gourds and that, things like squashes and pumpkins and that. They tend to sort of damp up if you're not careful. But all I'm doing is planting them about to the same level as the seed leaves. Now, what I mean by that, I'll just get one out so you can actually see. So if you've got the plant like that, so you can see the root balls at the bottom there, and then this first set of leaves, they're called the seed leaves, and then these are called the first true leaves. So plant it up to about there, and then it's about an inch or so deeper than it was originally. And basically what that'll do is it'll better anchor the plant, and then what you end up with is a better root ball for when you're planting it out into the garden. Now I put loads of these in, so there's plenty here, more than I need. I need about kind of 50 plants, I think. So there's most certainly more than that here. But as I say, all you need to do is just very gently sort of tease them apart, holding them by the stalk. Obviously, with any plants like this, what you need to remember is the roots will repair themselves. Any leaves that come off, more leaves will form. But if you damage the stalk, the plant's not going to recover from that, so be really careful when you're pulling them apart. If you can handle them by the roots or the leaves, that's a much better option than anything else. But so as you can see, just very quickly pouring them in like that, and then they'll stay in these pots then for about another 3 weeks or so, until they get to about kind of 6 inches high, and then as soon as they're that big, so it's 9 inches high, sorry, and then as soon as they get to that kind of size, then you can then put them out into the garden, and hopefully by that time they should have the ones that are in the ground should have already generated the florets and they're out of the ground, and then there'll be room for these to go in. But as you can see, I'm just handling these by the roots. Now you will find that you're much better off putting a smaller plant in with better roots than putting a bigger plant in with less roots, because the roots will support the plant that much better, and you'll find that the smaller ones, you're looking for kind of a root ball like that, I don't know if you can see, you'll find that those plants will develop so much quicker and healthier. The bigger plants, if you haven't got much of a root stock, you'll find that those plants won't develop as well, because they're basically trying to redevelop the roots, and so it'll hold them back a little bit. The smaller plants, obviously, you can plant. So I'm not going to put that one in because there's basically not enough root on there. So what you want is a reasonable sized root on it, like that. Okay, that's what you're looking for, and then you're much better off opting for a smaller plant with a better root than a large plant with a small root, because even the larger plants, if there's not much root on them, it's not going to support the leaves, and the plant could potentially die off anyway. But right, so I'll just finish these off, and I'll be planting these out probably in about 2 weeks time or so, 2 to 3 weeks time. As soon as they've started to sort of develop and get a bit bigger, then I'll be able to put them out. And then what I may well do is put some of these down in the bottom tunnel, because I'm not sure the ones at the top tunnel here are going to be finished by the time these are ready to go in. So I think what I'll probably do is put some of these down in the bottom tunnel, and then along with the gourds and that, and then these can grow on down there for later. Probably about September time these will start to crop. I'll show you these in a couple of weeks time, as soon as they get to the point where they're ready to go in the ground. Okay, so I'm a bit late in doing this, to be honest with you, but I'm potting up the hollyhocks. Now, hollyhocks are the tall, large flowers that you see. With these ones are actually white. You get them with black flowers on as well, and also sort of purples and stuff, and pinks. But basically, I grew these early in the year. Now, I should have done this probably a few weeks ago, but what I'm doing is just teasing them out and just potting them up now. What I'm going to do is put them in these square pots for now, and then what I'll do is sort of pot them up probably at the back end of the year as well, and then these will go in the ground, so they'll overwinter in the greenhouse, and they'll go into the ground next spring, and then all being well I should get a flower off them next year. As I say, these are biennial. Now what you could do, if you've got a bit of spare ground somewhere, which unfortunately I don't, is you could potentially plant these outside now in a sort of border which that you can't really see, like a like a bedding border. Oh, just pull that off there. So all I'm doing is just pulling off these sort of outer leaves that are going a bit brown. You can see there's a reasonable sort of rootstock on them. Now these will develop into nice healthy plants for next year, and then I'll be able to plant these out in the garden, which will give me nice large, they grow about 6 foot high, and then you get like a succession of flowers going up them, if you don't know what hollyhocks look like. But they are biannual, so they're a plant that you have to really invest in, to be honest with you, because you grow them 1 year, and then it's the following year where you actually start to reap the benefits of if you're actually growing them. But these will grow on nicely in these little pots. You don't want to put them into a too big a pot, because you just want them to develop the roots this year, and then next year they'll grow into a nice healthy, I think there's actually 2 there. Yeah, there is. So all I'm doing is just sort of half filling one of these pots, and then just dropping taking off the outer leaves, dropping the root ball in there, and then that will develop into a bigger root ball. It's basically, because it's a sort of biennial, or sort of, you can sort of class these as perennials, to be honest with you, because I have had these sort of grow for 4 to 5 years. As long as you get a reasonably mild winter, there's no reason to believe that these won't survive for a 3rd, 4th or 5th year, and it's typically sort of bad frost that kill them off in the end. But as long as it's not too, the winter's not too severe, these will actually survive and will grow on for a number of years. Right, so I'm just going to pop the rest of these up, water them, keep them in the greenhouse, and what I'll do towards the end of the year, I'll put them outside just to sort of harden up a little bit, and then during the winter I'll bring them back into the greenhouse just to overwinter. Now they should die down like a sort of perennial. They'll die like an herbaceous perennial. They'll die down to the ground. So it's basically you just store the roots over the winter, and then next year they'll start to grow. Plant them outside, and then before you know it, they'll develop into quite a large plant. The rate of growth next year will be considerably higher than it has been this year. And then you'll find a single spine grows up from the centre, and then you get loads of flowers on that. So I'll show you these in a few weeks' time. As I say, this is the hollyhocks. That's what they look like when they're fully grown. They grow to about sort of 7 foot high, and you get loads of seeds off those. Okay, so that's all the broccoli potted up. So I've got 60 there, broccoli plants, and then that's the hollyhock plants, and there's 30 of those potted up. As I say, I'll leave those in the greenhouse till they get established in those pots. Then I'll put them outside to harden off for a few weeks this year, and then next year, as I say, they'll come back into the greenhouse to overwinter, and then next spring I'll put them out into the borders, and then they'll make some nice plants for next year. The broccoli, obviously I'll come back to this in a few weeks' time. As soon as that gets to about 9 inches or so tall, that'll be pretty much ready to go out into the garden, and then I'll be planting that as and where I can fit it in, because I think this will come to fruition before the other is finished. But that's what the broccoli and the hollyhocks look like now they're potted up. Okay, so an important job we need to do this time of year is basically making sure we've got plenty of ventilation around the bottom of tomato plants. The reason being, if you have poor ventilation, particularly if you have them as highly populated as tomato plants as I have, what you can get is sort of stagnation of the air and then that causes damp, and these are the ideal conditions for blight in the tomato plant. So basically blight is a fungus, and basically that thrives in sort of damp, warm environment. Now, as you can see from the outside of the greenhouse, you can see all these weeds that have grown. Basically what I need to do is clear all of those out from the greenhouse to make sure plenty of air can get around the bottom of the tomato plant, and also at the same time we need to take off the bottom few branches of each, leaves off the bottom of each of the tomato plants to enable a nice sort of cool and fresh air to flow through the bottom of the plants to prevent any kind of blight attacking the plants. Okay then, so the first thing we need to do is all of these sort of weeds and that have gathered at the bottom of the plants, we need to take these out. Now if you grow tomatoes like I do in a sort of border or a bed in your greenhouse, what you need to do is kind of get sort of soil from outside, which is obviously going to have weed seed in it. Now this is predominantly sort of chickweed that I get in the greenhouse, but I've also got some Dom Pedro planter plants in here, I've noticed. Well, basically what I need to do is just get all the way to the back like that and pull out all of the weeds, and then that will give the maximum amount of, so these are Dom Pedro plants, which obviously seeds have fallen off the plant that I had in here last year over winter. So as soon as you've done that, obviously I'll continue along the way, but basically what you need to do then is to take off the bottom few leaves of the tomato plant. Now what I'll do is I'll take off these top few here, but what you need to do is obviously use secateurs. What you want is a nice clean cut on the leaf. Don't try and pull them off, because you'll basically run the risk of pulling the bark off the plant, which is then going to be an easy way for blight to get in. Now I need to cut these off to the point where I can easily get to water, but also the airflow will go nicely around the bottom of the plant, because obviously the water is going to go in the bottom here, and what I want is for the air to be able to circulate round properly, so I don't get any chance of blight forming on the plant or anything like that. So I'll continue to do this, and I'll show you as soon as I've got it finished. Okay, so you can now see how much clearer the bottom of the greenhouse is, and you can see how the air can now easily flow through underneath the tomatoes, and that's going to prevent any kind of conditions that blight could potentially attack the plants. Now, in addition to that, obviously the tomatoes at the bottom, as you can see here, those are the first fruits to start to ripen. So in addition to stopping the blight as well, also at this time of year you need to start taking the leaves back anyway to let more light through to the fruit, and then obviously the fruit can then start to ripen as they see the sunlight. But you can see from the side as well, I've taken out all of the weeds. I've basically filled this truck here. I've taken out all the weeds. I've also taken off any side shoots and bits and bobs like that. So it's now nice and clean. All the weeds are out, and I've taken off probably about the first probably 18 inches, 2 foot of leaves, just so it's nice and clear. And obviously, you know, don't take too many off. All you need to do is take off enough so that the air can flow around the bottom, because obviously that's where the water is going to be when you water the plants at night. So that's one of the things you need to do with the tomatoes. The second thing is we need to start to take the tops off. Now, I don't know if you can see, but these tomatoes now have basically reached the top of the greenhouse. So what I need to do now is start to take the top off. So I'll show you how to do that now. Okay, so as you can see, this particular tomato here has basically reached the top of the stalk. Now, what I always do is take the top out of it, just above a fruit truss. So that's the fruit truss there. You can see the flowers on it. So I'm going to cut that off like that, nice and clean with a pair of secateurs, and that's basically the growing tip. Now, I always try to do it so that you know, I haven't lost any sort of fruit and trusses, or at least as best I can. So you should have, on a plant that's this high, you should have somewhere in the region of about 5 fruit trusses. So I think on this one we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's actually 4 on this one. And then as soon as you've done that, obviously the weight of the fruit is going to be on this top bit here. You don't want that to snap off, so you most certainly need to put a tie on that there. Now this one at the back here, I'm just going to move the camera slightly. This one at the back here, I'm just going to take that leaf off there, off this neighbouring one, because we don't really need that. So you can see this one here, it's got this side shoot on it, so I'm going to take that side shoot off to start with. And then again, we've got this fruit truss here. So what I'm going to do is just take that off. I would normally leave that leaf on, but I'm going to take that off at that point there. Now, this is that fruit truss is slightly higher than the glass will allow. But what I'm going to do is leave that on anyway, just to get that extra fruit truss on it. Then I'm going to tie it off as low down as I possibly can do onto the cane. I might need to bend that over slightly, like that. And what you want to do is you want to try and do this on a day that's not too hot, because the plants can obviously lose a reasonable amount of moisture when you start to cut off the stems and stuff. So try to do it on a reasonably cool day if you can. Right, okay, so we've got this one at the back now. I'm just going to move the camera slightly again. So this one at the back here, by rights I should have done this one here. By rights I should have done this, you can't really see that very well. I should have done this a couple of weeks ago, but basically this sort of whole top section here is sort of grown over. Let me just move the camera again so you can see it a bit better. I don't know if you can see, but that sort of, this stem here is bending over because of the glass. So I'm going to take that whole top section out of the plant. I'm going to take it off here with the secateurs like that there. So I'll leave the and then be really gentle, because there's flowers on this. Obviously you can damage the flowers if you're not careful. I'm just going to pull that out sideways. So obviously I've had to sacrifice these bits, but basically it was too tall to stay where it was. And then again, all I'm going to do is just tie in just below or just above the fruit truss, because obviously that's where the weight on the plant's going to be. Nice and tight like that, 'cause it's not going to get any wider than that, and then that will support any tomatoes which form off these flowers. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on and go along, trimming off the top of the remaining ones, and I'll show you what that looks like in a few moments. Okay, so as you can see now from the outside, you can also tell that it's a lot more sort of clear at the bottom of the greenhouse, and there's no sort of obstruction to the air and stuff. And then as we come inside now, what I've done with the top, as you can see, I've taken off all of the tops. This one here is not quite ready yet. I've cut off the tops just above the last fruiting truss, along here as well, and I've also taken out any side branches. Now what this will do, this will stop the plant from growing up, but it'll also allow the plant to focus in on the fruit, and it'll make basically more and better tomatoes. Now this year the pollination's not been brilliant. I have got a few fruit trusses where the flowers just haven't pollinated, and I think that's due to the lack of insects and also the heat that we've had. I think that's possibly something to do with it. But I've had quite a few flowers which haven't been pollinated in the greenhouse. I don't know if you can see any down here. There's a fruit truss like this one here. You know, none of those have been pollinated at the end there. I saw another one around here somewhere. This one here, look, none of those flowers have been pollinated. But you know, the others still have been pollinated. I mean, I could have gone round with a little brush and just pollinated them myself. But as you can see, you know, there's a lot more air round the plants now, and also more importantly, there's a lot more sunlight as well now. As time goes on, what I will do is thin out some more of these leaves. So now the plant's got to the top, and I've taken the tops out. What I will start to do in a few weeks' time is start to take off some more of these leaves to let more light through to the fruit themselves. And so basically what I will end up with potentially is the tomato plant with no leaves on it at all, only fruit, and then that'll give the maximum amount of light. I typically don't get that far. The tomatoes typically ripen well before I take all the leaves off, but I will be taking off some more leaves and just randomly thinning them. So I'll take 1 or 2 leaves off each of the plants just to let more light and air through to the fruit to you know, so that they will you know, sort of ripen. Now one trick you can use if you want your tomatoes to ripen, so if you go in you know, if you go in sort of on holiday or whatever, and you want to get them to, you know, ripen all together or whatever, if you put some old tomato skins in the bottom, or sort of lay them on top of the canes or something like that, what they will do is they will get your tomatoes to ripen a lot quicker. The other thing you can do is, if you do start to have tomatoes that are ripe, rather than picking them straight away, leave them on the plant a little while, and those ripe tomatoes will also send the other tomatoes ripe as well. Obviously the opposite way to do that is if you don't want the tomatoes to ripen, and you know, you're going away and you don't want them to all ripen whilst you're away, what you can also do is any tomatoes which show any signs of ripening, take them straight off the plant, put them in your kitchen window, and finish the ripening process in your kitchen window. And what that will do is that will prevent any of the other tomatoes on the plants from ripening whilst you're sort of away on holiday. Last point, now you've taken the top out, what the plant will try to do is throw more side shoots out. So what you need to be is, every night when you water, be quite diligent, look out for sort of side shoots like this one here, for example. I just left this on so I could show you. So it will start to throw out side shoots like that. What you need to do is just basically take that one way and the other, and just take that off, and then dispose of it. Now everything that I've taken off the tomato plants in here today, I will not be composting. This will all go in the green bin. So all of this here will go into the green bin. The weeds and that don't really matter, but the parts of the tomato plant are still subject to blight and things like that. And if you leave them anywhere near the greenhouse, if blight starts to form on these, it'll then pass obviously to the plants as well. So make sure that any bits of the tomato plant that you take off, always dispose of it away from the greenhouse. You can compost them, but just make sure that the compost is, you know, well away from your tomato plants and greenhouses. Obviously also be careful of potato plants, because they're also in the same family. They can also get blight in exactly the same way. So don't compost any either potato tops or tomato plants anywhere near any of your growing plants, because if there is any blight, it'll form on the rotting vegetation, then pass to your you know, your plants and that, which is obviously to be avoided. But that's what the tomatoes look like at the moment. So, I hope this episode was of some use to you. Please don't hesitate to put any comments or questions you've got below, and I'll always get back to you. And I'll see you on the next episode of Jim's Little Garden.